practices are going. Inter Miami's 2022 preseason is officially underway. Hello everybody and welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, aka Miami Total Football Radio, the number one and most listened to podcast on Inter Miami, a podcast that has been heard in more than 50 countries. If you are new here, well, we provide you all the latest news, updates, inside info, analysis, opinions, and much, much more. My name is Franco Panizo. I am one part of this hosting team. The other two members are both here on this week's show. Their names are Steve El Primo Brenner and Jose PS5 Armando. Jose, I don't know. We might have to change that nickname to make it a bit more evergreen. I feel like PS5 is a bit too 221 or 2021. Maybe we should just call you Maybe we should just call you Cinco. What do you think about that?
All right, that's fine. That's fine. I like it.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
Okay, because when Steve started on the podcast, his initial nickname was David Beckham's long-lost cousin. And then over time, that transformed into El Primo, which is why he is El Primo. There's a little bit of backstory if you weren't up to date on Steve's nickname. But before we get to Steve, Jose, how are you doing? We got to take in a practice session. It is now Wednesday. We've had a bit of time to chew on everything we saw and heard. So how was your week going, first of all? And we'll jump into, I guess, all the Inter Miami stuff in just a little bit.
Well, everything is good. Listen, when we get an opportunity to go to training session, I had a little bit of a taste of more soccer this week because of the Colombia-Honduras friendly the night before the start of preseason. So I've had a
Sorry
lot of
for your
football.
loss. Sorry for your loss.
Come on now. Come on. It's a friendly. So I've had a lot of football this week, so I can ask for more, and probably we'll have a little bit more in the next few days.
We will have a little bit more. Inter Miami's having some availability on Thursday, and we will be back out there. So we will get more information to provide to our listening audience as well as just the general public that maybe doesn't listen to the podcast but follows us on other social media platforms. Steve, Primo, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm very well, mate. Very well. Hello to all our listeners, our global band of listeners, loyal ones too. Like Jose said, it was nice just to get back there. It's such a good training facility there. I know it's, all the top clubs have got great facilities, but no, it's a decent facility, and everyone was sort of full of beans and looking forward to the season. Obviously, that will probably end when the season starts and things start getting really, really serious, but it did have that nice sort of preseason feel. First day at school, everyone was happy. It was good to see people. So let's hope they carry on in that vein, and we're still smiling all season.
Yeah, it was definitely a first day of school type vibe, right? It's the day that everyone is pretty much at their happiest. Everyone's smiling. There's no tension because the games haven't been rolling yet. There hasn't been any losses, etc., etc. So things are going pretty smoothly. But obviously, we know that will change as the season progresses, unless Inter Miami goes 34-0. But anyway,
That's it. Stay positive right from the outset. Yeah, first day of school, let's be really, really negative.
New year, new me. No, listen, we will jump into our takeaways from that first preseason practice. We will touch on the Blaise Matuidi situation, which Steve broke some news on this week, and we will touch on a whole lot more, give you our observations, give you our opinions. Please, if you haven't done so already and you are a regular listener, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes. If you don't know how to do it, all you have to do is pull us up on the Apple Podcast app and scroll to the bottom and then just leave us a review. You can leave us a 1-star through 5-star, whatever you think we deserve. If you want to write a sentence or two, you're more than welcome to, but just please leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. We have a lot of new things in store for you guys this year. I believe we will start with those new things next week, so stay tuned. Keep those ears wide open because we have some very, very cool things. Hopefully, we will start next week. That is the tentative plan as of right now. But anyway, let's dive into the meat and potatoes. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to it. Okay, guys, so preseason is officially underway. Our off seasons are over. I hope you guys enjoyed them because we're headed into another long season. We'll be here from start to finish. So let's just start with what your biggest takeaways were from this first practice. I'll start with you, Steve. What did you take away from either what you saw or what was said on Monday on day one of the 2022 preseason?
It's sometimes difficult to find out exactly what's happening on training. I think Mabika is very, very tall. That definitely was one takeaway.
That's a big takeaway. A big takeaway, no pun intended.
Big takeaway. He is. He's got long legs. If he could just fill out a bit, I think he looks a serious player. But it's interesting when we spoke to Phil Neville, afterwards, he actually mentioned the sort of centre back and rebuilding the sort of defence and looking for them to sort of grow and as a new team. And I think that was the theme from him and Chris Henderson, that this is like a new squad. It's a younger squad. It's what they wanted. Moving forward, they had to get rid of the older heads, the Gonzalez Perez's and people like that. And it's a kind of fresh start. I like the look of that little Bryce Dyke they got from LAFC. He looked a really decent player, and Harvey Neville was there. Even Romeo Beckham was there. It was interesting to see, but I like the look of Dyke. It looks good.
Bryce Duke.
Sorry, Bryce Duke. But either way, Duke or Dyke, he looked a nice, tidy little player in centre midfield, and I'm interested to see him play moving forward.
I was also impressed by Bryce Duke in the 20, 30 minutes that we saw of training. I know Jose was giving me some stick there for having some takeaways from practice, but look, I'm of the belief that how you practice helps how you play. And practices, while they can be repetitive, if you go on the day-to-day, I do think that you can take away a lot from them. And I'm actually a big practice nerd. I like to observe, I like to analyze, I like to watch and see how players are doing on the day-to-day. For me, the biggest takeaway was just how young and energetic this team was, because in that half hour or so that we were able to watch practice, the team buzzed about. We saw that the team split into basically, I don't know if it was 99, 10v10, but we saw them play a small-sided game. It wasn't a full field, and we saw that for the majority of the time we were in there. We also saw Leonardo Campana, who has not officially been announced yet, the Ecuadorian international striker. He was jogging about the field with Ryan Saylor, the first-round draft pick. So they were both in training. So was Emerson Rodriguez, who was announced today as being an official signing. So a lot of news and nuggets that you could take away, but for me the biggest thing was just how energetic and young this team is, and how they buzzed about the field in that game, in that small-sided game. It looked a little bit more intense from a physical standpoint than what we saw for much of 2021, and that's probably understandable given the youth that has been brought in. Jose, what was your biggest takeaway from Monday's practice, or from just Monday's availability in general?
Well, listen, I think we have to split things up a little bit, because the one thing that I really liked about this team is the intensity that they were working with, and it's still surprising to me how preseason has changed in the last few years. I remembered, not that long ago, the first day was more about physical and just trying to get in shape, and things have changed so much that now players are ready to basically start thinking about tactics and playing and using the ball more than what they used to. So I like to see that. I think that gives us an opportunity to see a little bit more what these players can bring to the table. I really liked Ariel Lassiter. I think he's going to be a very important player for this team. I saw Campana as well running around, just jogging, and it came to my mind that the situation that Inter Miami was last year with not having another striker other than Higuain, well, at least one that you can actually rely on. And Campana in his build, he looks like a very good player. We'll see how he is with the ball, but he looks really good. And the other side of things was
he's tall. He's tall.
Yeah, he's very tall, and he looks more like a like a 9. I can't believe now that with Higuain getting out of the box and trying to help out a little bit, you're still going to have a player inside the box waiting for the ball and trying to score. Now, how comfortable is Pipita going to be with Campana scoring goals and maybe he not scoring as much? I don't know. That's for something that Phil needs to work on. But I really liked that Phil took responsibility on 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 the roster that he has for 2022. He even mentioned that last year they were not a team, and so that's important to hear, especially on the first day, because he takes on the responsibility to build almost a brand new squad, and we'll see what they can do. It's only the first day, but I think the mentality is there for the coaching staff, for Chris Henderson as well, and for the players, of course.
Another interesting tidbit or note on Leonardo Campana, and this is something you can pick up only by being at practice, and we will share this with you, is that he speaks English. He was speaking to Ryan Saylor because they were the two that were doing some extra laps while the team was doing ball work and playing that small-sided game. They were doing fitness work and running laps around the field, and they were speaking in English from what we could pick up the few times that they ran by us. So,
well, remember,
a communication level.
On loan.
Yeah, right.
He's on loan. He's on loan from Wolves, isn't he? So, well, he was on loan from Wolves, right?
Well, yeah, he was on loan in his previous stints.
Yes.
We don't know what the deal is yet because they haven't announced it here, but yes, he speaks English, so that'll help at least with the transition, because he can communicate a little bit better than maybe someone like an Emerson Rodriguez who's maybe doesn't speak English. Just for an example.
And on my Football Manager game 22, Leonardo Campana is not too bad. My scout has actually told me not only sign him as a last resort, but his physical attributes are pretty good. So yeah, I think he's going to be good in the air, and that could complement Higuain, which I'm sure we'll touch on later what he said. But he seems like a physical player, but also decent in the air, which could obviously useful at set pieces and things like that. But just gives them another option if they're behind the game, then they can just, for want of a better word, lump it up to the big man.
Chris Henderson did say something interesting about set pieces. We can touch on that in just a little bit, but I do want to touch on something that Gonzalo Higuain and Phil Neville said during their press conferences. Something Chris Henderson alluded to, but he didn't say it outright in the way that Gonzalo Higuain and Phil Neville did. And that is that given how young this team is, given how many new pieces are in place, patience is going to be needed for this team to develop and unfold, which, reading between the lines, that means clearly that maybe they're not built to win right away. And that's understandable because of how many new pieces there are, how many new faces, how many new players, the different understanding and partnerships that have to be developed. That doesn't just take a preseason. That doesn't just take some friendlies. That takes actual games, meaningful games where the intensity is even higher. So this team, based on what I believe and based on what was said, it's going to take some time for them to find their footing. Maybe they can come out of the gates flying, but I imagine they will be clicking much more differently in the middle of the season than at the start of the season. Now, the question for me is, how much patience will Inter Miami fans have for this group? Inter Miami came out of the gates. We've talked about it endlessly. They came out of the gates talking how they wanted to compete for an MLS Cup right away. They wanted to be one of the best teams in the league. Last year they said, or Jorge Mas said, that they were gunning for a top 3 finish in the Eastern Conference. We know they fell well short of that in 11th place. But now this year, it seems like they're being a little bit more humble with their expectations for what the season can behold. So, what do you think? Do you think Inter Miami fans will be patient? Do you think Inter Miami fans will give this team a chance to develop? Or will they be seeking results immediately and not be happy with, a few losses at the start of the year if that's how things play out? Steve, what do you think?
They've just got to be better, haven't they? I think fans just want to see improvement. They want to see changes that have been made by the front office in terms of actively trying to change and right the wrongs of last season. I think they've done that, or they are doing in the process of doing that. And they just want to be better. I mean, how many times did we sit there last season and it was just, awful. Those 2 terrible, streaks when they lost all those games in a row. They just want improvement. From the outset, from what we're looking at now, it looks like they've got some interesting building blocks in place to make themselves better. But of course, the proof is in the pudding once we first start. But making a good fist of trying to turn things around. Now, what happens when they go on the pitch? That's what Phil Neville and his coaching staff are doing right now, trying to mold them together. But I'm actually quite like the pieces they brought in. I like the moves they've done to get players out, and they've freshened things up. So I think so far the signs look good, but yeah, it's all talk, isn't it? Until they actually start kicking a ball around when the season starts next month. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think fans just want to see improvement and that the club are trying to make a change. And we're going to touch on it, but with the DP spot opening up now, then that's that's interesting. And we haven't really touched on Jean Mota at all, as who also comes with a great reputation. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all gel together, if they do at all, which I'm sure they will do. And it could take a few games, but I think they're making a good fist of it.
Jose, what are your thoughts? Do you think the South Florida fan base, the Inter Miami faithful, do you think that they will be patient? Do you think that they will afford Inter Miami some time to develop this team, or will they be seeking results right away after 2 very subpar years by and large? Yes, they made the playoffs in 2020 as the 10th place team. Different circumstance because of COVID, but obviously a 10th place finish and an 11th place finish in the standings is not great. So do you think Inter Miami fans, who we know just from a sports market, South Florida fans, from the market, like to see winners, do you think that they will afford Inter Miami some time to find their footing and really develop this team?
Well, I think it depends on the definition of time. How long is it going to take? I don't think Inter Miami fans are ready to just listen. The one thing for me, and you mentioned it with South Florida sports, is that there's competition here, and so I think that the soccer savvy fans, they understand the process that the team is going through. But I'm not 100% sure that, 70 or 80% of the people that attend games are going to be happy with watching a team that develops in front of them, but that drops 7 of the first 10 games. Right. I think it's a short time for Inter Miami to turn things around. And that doesn't necessarily mean to win out, but show something different, show that you actually have the talent on the field. Last year, even, and the year before, when players like Carranza and Pellegrini were signed and people were able to finally see them on the field, there was an expectation about them, but the expectation was not met. And maybe this time around, with players like Campana, Rodriguez, he's a player that he's very young. Campana is very young, but they do have some experience internationally, and they want to take advantage of this opportunity. Even Lassiter mentioning that playing with Higuain was something very important to him. He's a Real Madrid fan, and he used to watch him play. Those things are very important at times, and especially when you're trying to develop a new team. And so I think there's a level of respect within the team, within the players. They all know as well that the team has been struggling in the first 2 years. So I'm sure they want to be part of the good side of Inter Miami. So it's a tough question, but I don't think they have a lot of time. I don't think they have a lot of time because frustrations from last year will come back if things are not looking good in the first 10 games of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have some wiggle room. I think Inter Miami has some time to find its footing, but I don't think they have the luxury of half a season to try to right the wrongs. I think if, like you said, they start piling up the losses early for an extended period, then some Inter Miami fans may start putting their attention elsewhere. The Miami Heat are doing pretty well. Summer in South Florida is always a great time to do different things. So, Inter Miami is competing for dollars, is competing for people's attention in a market that has a bevy of options for you to entertain yourself with. So we'll see how it goes. I do think they'll have some time, but we'll see just how much time. Any other practice observations you guys want to share? Because I do want to share that I know Inter Miami's brass kept saying this is a hungrier team. That's talk from the inside. We can't really gauge that, but I would say that this is obviously, with the youth, a more athletic and physically gifted team. Maybe not technically gifted, but a more physically gifted team. And we saw a bunch of different players that had some height on them. Chris Henderson, going back to the previous point that I said I would expand on, during his press conference, noted that Inter Miami, as we know, was poor on set pieces once again in 2021. And now with some of the players that they've brought in that have a bit more height, they expect to be better on set pieces and more of a threat on attacking dead ball situations. So that was notable. And again, just the energy and the speed with which some of the players moved about, I thought that was also a pretty big takeaway from day one. But anything else you guys want to share from practice, or do you want to expand on that itself, that this team might be a bit more athletic, to use another term, a little bit more physically gifted? Jose, you can start.
Well, I think everybody wants to know how Pepito Higuain is doing, because obviously there was a lot of talk last year about him not being in shape and struggling at times. But signs are looking, I think, are looking good. I mean, he's engaging with his teammates. He still seemed a little bit tired towards the end of the training session, at least the part that we saw. But I think that's only normal. It's the first day. But he looks a lot better than last year. Last year, when I saw him for the first time, I was not very excited. I even predicted that he would end up scoring 7 goals and not more, which, of course, he did score 12. And I was wrong about that.
Take that, Cinco. Take that.
But still, I think this year it's looking different, and maybe he gets energized by the players around him, and we'll see. I think for him it's not only about physically being able to perform at a high level, but as well to engage with his teammates in a positive way, and just mentally he needs to be in the right place, and it looks like he is.
Steve, what about you? Any other takeaways you have? Do you want to expand on Higuain? Because I do think that is a big talking point. We will touch on him from a positional standpoint in just a little bit, but anything you want to add with regards to Monday's session?
Yeah, well, no, I just want to say also with Higuain, no Pizarro now, so he's freed up. And like I said, unfortunately, my Spanish isn't good enough. I didn't really understand most of the press conference, but everyone was laughing a lot. And he was asked about his beard, about his daughter, different things like that. So he was like super relaxed. He didn't look that relaxed when I went past him in the corridor, went to the restroom. He was just sort of looking a bit moody. But then when he came into the press conference, he was great. Yeah, and he's the leader, isn't he? He's the leader of the team. He's the main guy. He bored everyone to tears last season, going on about how the DPs need to produce and all this kind of stuff. But he just looked like he was in the mood to. So he gave Phil Neville a high five when Neville came out, when they swapped for media duties. He just, it's as if he's sort of he's now the mantle of like the top man, and everyone looks up to him, and rightly so, because of his career, and what he's been through. So it's gonna, it's a big. I think it's a big season for him.
He is a referente on this team now. What does that mean? That means he's one of the lead figures, one of the players that is one of the, you talk about Inter Miami, that's one of the players. Obviously, he's not the captain, that's Gregory, but he's one of the lead figures on this team, a player that people will turn to inside that locker room. He touched on that. He said, he has to have the right approach. He did say, interestingly enough, in Spanish that he'd have to be el malo at times, which means, the bad guy, but he said it in the good sense of the words, that if things aren't being done properly, that he might have to pull on somebody's ear. You just use that phrase just to try to get people on track, because this is a young team and there probably will be a lot of growing pains on the field, off the field, and with youth comes inexperience. So I think Phil Neville will be leaning on him to help steer the ship. We'll see how he does. I have questions on how well he'll, how good of a job he can do at that. Because last year with veteran players around him, and yes, we know the team didn't function all that well, but last year, you saw his arms flailing about. Now, if he's on a team with youngsters that might make more mistakes, or that, have to go through their growing pains, will he be as patient as he asked Inter Miami fans to be, or will he revert back to that frustration that we've seen from him, not only with Inter Miami but throughout his career, because that's just who he is. That's just how he lives and plays the game. We'll see. That'll be an interesting subplot for the 2022 season for Inter Miami. Let's touch
and let me add one more thing to that, because I don't know, and maybe Steve, you can help me with this. I don't know if Gonzalo Higuain, at least during his career, and at the highest level, I don't think he was never in this position to go out and talk to some of the teammates and tell them what to do, how to do it. Um, I'm not 100%
He
sure
said
that he
that.
was
He
able
said that during his
to
press
put in
conference.
that position. So that's going to be something new for him as well.
Yeah, he said that during his press conference. He said that this is kind of a new thing for him because he's never been one to really have to be that vocal. But he said he's open to taking that responsibility and that role and helping guide along this fairly young team. Again, he is un referente on this team. He's one of the leading figures, and he's going to have to help guide this very young team in order for this team to be anywhere close to what it wants to be, which is at least a playoff team. Those were because that was the mark or the bar that Chris Henderson set when I asked him what the expectations were for Inter Miami in 2022. Let's quickly touch on the other DP, someone who was not there at training. That's Blaise Matuidi. Steve, you had some breaking news that you shared after the practice session. What can you tell us about Blaise Matuidi's future at Inter Miami?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, Chris Henderson said in the press conference initially that, they were in talks with his representatives, and that's all that he could say. I then pushed him on it again, and he said, we're just talking to his representatives right now. Couldn't say much more. But then, I had it, confirmed a bit later on in the afternoon that, he's going to be leaving on a free transfer. They're just, sorting out the contracts or whatever they need to sort out in these kind of situations. I think, that's a massive thing. I know that they've wanted to get him off the books for quite a while. He obviously wasn't a Phil Neville signing. Obviously, and it came with everything in terms of the problems they had with the financials. So that's big. And as we've said, while Pizarro, you can't free up that DP slot because Monterrey aren't paying his full wages or loan fee. Matuidi's going to go, and that frees everything up. So now it's interesting to see, how much cash they've got. You maybe have a bit more of a touch on the finance in terms of what they've got left. And what they're gonna, who they're gonna bring in. But I think that's one of the best bits of news they've had for a while is that that he's going to be off. There was interest back in France, but he's had a great career, Blaise Matuidi. I don't think he's going to be necessarily that perturbed about it. Obviously they're in discussions about the remainder of his contract, but it hadn't really worked out, and he's not maybe the player he was back in 2018 when he won the World Cup. So I think that's a good move for all parties. And now the race is on to see, already people like Suarez are being mentioned and stuff like that. Suarez, I'm told, is not an option.
Coming. Yeah, come on. Let's nip that in the bud. Suarez is not coming.
Now.
He's not coming. His
contract is up at the end of the Liga season. Chris Henderson also did say that some moves may be made now.
They're not. They're not. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. No chance. No chance.
Whatever. I mean, but imagine if it did. Now you're talking. That would be cool.
Well, that's not happening. I'm not even going to entertain that idea because they're not going to have Luis Suarez, an old veteran striker, playing up top with Gonzalo Higuain playmaking behind him, who's also an older.
I know. And I've been told that's not. That's he's not on their radar or whatever. But it would be fun. We have to agree on that. That would be fun.
Sign him on your football manager. Have your fun there.
Let's give Campana a chance.
Yeah. But either way, big news. I think that's one of the biggest developments of this whole preseason. And it just gives them a bit more wiggle room. But how much money do you reckon that they've got in the bank now, considering all the, the sort of financial penalties and stuff from the Matuidi signing? How much do you reckon roughly they've got to play with right now?
No idea. Right. Because there's no real way to measure this, no real way to say, okay, they spent this much, they have this much. It's how much have they used in certain deals? It's just impossible to say. So I honestly won't even venture a guess because I just don't know. Maybe we can work on finding that out, but I wouldn't even put a guess out there.
They do have a type of player that they want, though. They mentioned during the press conference that they wanted it basically a 10.
Chris Henderson said a creative player that can help, generate attacking sequences and goals, which we can interpret as a 10, but it could just very well also be a winger or anything of the like. Doesn't necessarily mean.
But they have wingers, though.
Do they have starting caliber wingers?
We don't know. We don't know most of the players. I mean, we have seen them play, but
Ariel
only
Lassiter
on YouTube.
Ariel Lassiter had 0 goals and 0 assists last year in MLS. I don't think he's a starting caliber player on a team that has playoff expectations. Now, can he be?
He didn't play that much, though, did he? He didn't play that much.
He had his run of games with the Dynamo. He had his run of games. I'd have to pull up his stats right here to tell you exactly, but he had his run of games. It wasn't like he was barely used. But again, is he of starting caliber? I don't think so. I think he's a depth piece, someone that can help stretch the field, give you the occasional spot start. But I don't think he's an every game starter on this team. Is Robbie Robinson?
I think he will start.
You think Ariel Lassiter will start?
Yes.
How many
I think
games?
He will
Let's
start.
bet. Let's go right now. Let's go. How many games will he start in 2022?
More than 25.
Wow, really?
He will be a starter.
I will take that bet. I don't know what we'll bet. We'll come to terms on that. I'm not even a betting person, but I will take that bet. I do not.
He will be a starter. He will be a starter. I'm telling you right now.
I don't see that. Can he start the season as a starter? Sure, but 25 games in which he starts out of 34, I don't see that. But let's keep going. Let's keep going, Jose. We will come to terms and we'll tell the listeners next week what we agreed on. Maybe we can do a Peruvian versus Honduran meal, something like that. Because
yeah, we can do that as long as it's the hair is not involved. I'm okay because I don't have a lot, so I don't have a lot to offer there.
Yeah, I love my hair, so definitely definitely wouldn't bet my hair. Steve, quickly going back to Matuidi, do you know if you said it's a free transfer, but do you know if they're mutually agreeing to part ways and ripping up the contract so he can go on a free, or are they buying him out so he can go on a free? Do you know yet which way it's going?
I don't know the details of that. No, I did pose the question, but I haven't managed to find out right now. So no is the honest answer. But I mean, he had what, a year left on his current deal, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So they're going to be in discussions to do something like that. So I guess it will also be a deal where they've obviously been hit very hard because of the sanction, but maybe they'll lose a little bit of money on it as well if they have to pay him off, which I'm sure he's within his right. He's under contract, but I think just moving him on and freeing up that space, I think is just crucial. And yeah, they may not be getting a megastar Messi, Ronaldo, Suarez thing, but at least they've got that spot open where it just gives them a bit more sort of flexibility and to do something.
Okay, well, before we wrap up this segment of the pod by touching on a bunch of different players very quickly, I want to go back to Gonzalo Higuain because something we did not touch on, or not in enough detail in my opinion, that I think we need to expand on is him saying during his press conference that maybe this season he plays as more of a 10 and that he helps generate attacking sequences and creates chances for others and hits passes in behind to the spaces for his younger, fresher, more energetic teammates to run onto and for them to try to finish, etc., etc. Jose, what do you think about that? Do you think that's the best position for Gonzalo Higuain, for Pipita, on this version of Inter Miami with so many young, hungry, quote-quote, players on the roster? Him pulling the strings. We know his physical limitations. He does look a bit slimmer. I agree with you on that. He said he's come in better standing. He didn't say better shape, but he said he feels better now than he did a year ago, or he's come into preseason better than he did a year ago. He does look slimmer, in my opinion. Mentally, he's also in a different place. He says he's in a better place than he was last year when he had the weight of his mother's passing. He had to deal with that through much of the year. So, do you think playing him as the number 10, given his physical limitations, something he even noted himself and was open and honest about, saying, the body changes as you get older. It's not the same as it used to be. Do you think that is the best position for him on this team as a 10, or would you prefer him as the 9? I feel like you're gonna say 10 because I feel like you're high on Campana.
No, I want him as a 9. I don't believe that Pipita Higuain can run around for 30-something games, especially during the summer. Plus, you're taking him out of position. No. I mean, I'd like to give Campana a chance, but listen, the 9 is Gonzalo Higuain in this team. And I think we saw it last year. When he was inside the box, around the box, he was a lot better. Now, of course, you need to find a system that is going to help him stay inside the box, which is something that he struggled with last year. But he felt that he needed to move away from his position to get touches to get the team going. So that's exactly why I'm thinking, with all the money that's going to be freed up with Blaise Matuidi leaving, they should target a 10, and they should target a 10 that Pipita Higuain feels comfortable with. That he's going to believe in. He's going to believe in that 10. They need to find that Fede Higuain of last year. That's the player that they need. And I want him inside the box. I just don't see it. And I will have to wait and see. Preseason is going to be very, very important this year because we're going to get an opportunity to see exactly what Phil is thinking in terms of tactics this year.
Right.
And are they going to play the same style from last year through the wings, or are they going to be a little bit more central with more possession? It remains to be seen, but I want him as a 9. I want him inside the box.
So this is information. I have heard this from different conversations that I've had with people in and around the team. Inter Miami, up to this point, has trained in both a 3-man, aka a 5-man backline, as well as a 4-man backline. So the jury's out on which one they stick with or which one they adopt as their main look. It's early days. They'll have time to figure that out. But they're both on the table as of right now. Now, this is not information. This is just my supposition. I think Inter Miami's going to play with wingers. I think that, with the players they brought in, Emerson Rodriguez, Ariel Lassiter, Robbie Robinson, I think that they're going to look for speed down the wings. Just based on even Higuain's response when he said, last year, I had to occupy the spaces in the box, then drop back to receive the ball because we didn't get it, and I had to make that running back and forth, and that's very tiring. El desgaste es grande. Just based on that, and then how he said, I'll be the 10 and I'll just play passes in behind, that to me leads me to believe that they'll play with wingers. But that's just my interpretation from the day one press conference. Steve, should Gonzalo Higuain play the 9 or play the 10? I actually posed this question on Miami Total Football's Instagram account. If you're not following us on Instagram, give us a follow. It's at MIA Total Football. I posed the question for anybody that can view our stories to cast their vote, and it was pretty split, 50-50 for much of the voting process, which was 24 hours. Towards the end, number 9 won out, I think 56-44, something along those lines, or 54-46. So more people that voted wanted to see him or want to see him as a number 9 this season as opposed to number 10. But what about you, Steve? Where would you cast your vote? Number 9 striker or number 10 playmaker?
Yeah, I just he's, as you get older, like anyone, you lose your pace, and you've seen in the past players, drop back into midfield, the best players, the most technical players, and he's the most technical player in the team. He could drop back a bit deeper, see what happens with Campaños and Rodriguez maybe as well. They have no Lewis Morgan now, so they're going to restructure it. I think it sounded like he was going to kind of drop deeper. He was dropping deeper all the time anyway, wasn't he, last season, just picking up the ball and trying to do things. So just depends how the other strikers, or the other sort of forwards gel into the team. We had the situation last year where they didn't really have anyone else to try and score the goals. Carranza was the guy that kept coming on and didn't really do anything. So they got Campaños now. So we'll see how they kind of do that. Mota as well in midfield. It's a completely different. It's going to be a completely different forward line, isn't it?
I could see him playing a false 9. I could see him playing as a false 9 where he occupies the striker role, but he drops deep and lets the wingers provide the verticality and the threat in the final third, because I don't think he can give you that function of doing both, getting back and picking up the ball and also being in the final third. He doesn't really stretch defenses anymore. He doesn't have that speed. Last year when he did get in behind, I would say 90% of the time the offside flag was raised. He just doesn't have that ability anymore, at least in a league like MLS where the physical component is so big, so notable, to really get in behind. So I could see him playing a false 9. I could see him, and that might be a cop-out answer because it's a hybrid between a 9 and a 10, but I could see that happening. Where would I play him? I would play him as a 9. I don't think him as a 10, as an outright 10, will work over the course of the season, because now how do you press as a team? How do you, from a defensive posture, how do you press? How do you have a striker and a 10 press in that way if your 10 can't really press? So, does your 9 have to drop behind him and do the dirty work on the defensive side? But then that makes Gonzalo Higuain a number 9 again. So if Inter Miami wins the ball very quickly, he's at the 9, and then the striker in this theory, right? In theory, would drop as the 10, and I just don't think it works. I don't think it works, but we'll see how Phil Neville approaches.
He is, even though he hasn't got much pace, he's aggressive, isn't he? So it could work if he was in the middle, just to add a bit more aggression and snap and bite.
So
higher
that's
up.
not the duty of a number 10, though. Like, right? I don't like. By and large, I don't think that that's a high quality or high priority around the world for number 10s, right? Like, every position just, has es un función, right? Jose, un función, which would translate, I guess, to a duty or duties. Every position has duties. A number 10, do you really need to be aggressive? You're more of the string puller, playmaker, if you can provide goals yourself.
I was just saying that's one of his attributes, and that could be used to his advantage if he hasn't got the physicality to maintain this high press all the time. At least he's got that presence and aggression. That's what I was trying to say.
I think even if Pipita places a 10, I think they still need a player in that position, because there are going to be scenarios within the regular season in which he's not going to be able to play. I think at some point they're going to manage minutes as well with him. So I think you still need that player. And the other thing is as well, is Robbie Robinson a full-time winger now? Because, it seems like he was moved to that position out of necessity, just trying to get him minutes, and because he probably did earn those minutes as well in training. But I think he can play as a 9 as well. So, I think they have a series of combinations, and only we're going to have a clear picture of what this team looks like once we get to see them play in preseason. So again, I think preseason, if you're a fan of Inter Miami, preseason games are not very attractive most of the time. But if you want to really understand what this team is all about, I think that's going to be a very, very important time for you to pay attention. At some point, I would imagine as well that we're going to see the starting 11 for the first game, or at least the ideal starting 11 in Phil's head played during preseason. So hopefully, we get all those opportunities. Sometimes, players miss games because of injuries during preseason and just trying to take care of their bodies and be ready for the first game. But if we get that sample size that's big enough in preseason, I think we have a clear idea. But there are a lot of moving parts within this team, and I think that's a good thing for Phil.
Phil Neville was not shy about changing his tactics or his looks and formations throughout the course of last year. I imagine this year will be very similar. I imagine we'll see a bunch of different systems used at different times until he finds the right combination that he really wants to go with, or the main two formations that he wants to go with. But yeah, I mean, again, for me, just to put a final thought on it, I would say I would use Higuain as a 9. I think we'll see a hybrid of sorts. Either he plays a false 9, or he just alternates between playing up top as a striker and as the playmaker at the 10. He could use excuse me. We could see him in both positions at different portions of the season. I also think, you mentioned Robbie Robinson. I think he is a winger. I think that's where he projects going forward. I don't think he has the technical abilities to be a number 9, but I do think that we could also see him at the number 9 at different points this season if, Campana needs a break or is not available, or, and it just depends on the matchups and the moment, because Futbol is a game of moments. So I do think we will see a lot of different variations of how Inter Miami deploys this season, but it's early days. We'll see how things play out, and how Phil Neville approaches things with this team.
I would say this. If Robbie Robinson is a full-time winger, he's in trouble this year. Ariel Lassiter will take his spot. All right.
No, we're definitely making that bet. We're 100% making that bet. Okay, let's just do a quick rundown, just to wrap up this segment here. A quick rundown of other players and their current situations. Nicolas Figal was also not in training on Monday. Chris Henderson confirmed afterwards that Figal is in conversations with multiple teams. Didn't say Boca Juniors, although that's been reported. He said that they are in conversation, or he's been in conversations, with multiple teams, Figal, and that they're working through that. And that's all he really much said about that. We don't expect Nicolas Figal to be back. Robbie Robinson also spoke to us, speaking of Robbie Robinson, after the practice. And for me, look, if that's the Robbie Robinson that we see on the field, then I think Robbie Robinson has a better chance to make an impact, because I saw a more confident Robbie Robinson in that conversation. He defended his departure from Chile's national team. This was the first time we were able to speak to him since then. Obviously, he's had some time to think about what he's going to say and how he's going to say it, I'm sure. But, you know, he the way he expressed himself, while still kind of quiet and reserved, true to himself, he was also a bit more confident. The most confident I've seen him in a media press conference setting. So if that's the type of player, if that confidence can translate onto the field, I think, you know, he's in good standing, and Inter Miami will benefit from that. Kieran Gibbs spoke to us as well, but I've heard he is doing very limited work on the field. He's not even running, is what I've heard. So he's still recovering from an injury. Someone else that's also recovering from an injury is, as we mentioned last week, to keep an eye on, goalkeeper Nick Marsman. He was doing individual work during the portion of training that we could see. The goalkeepers that were playing in the small-sided game were Clement Diop and Drake Callender. So keep an eye out on that, because Nick Marsman is still not 100% yet. Breck Shea was in training. He has not been announced yet as a signing, but he was in training. And last but not least, someone that nobody mentioned, and I didn't even mention it in training itself to you guys, or we didn't even talk about it yet. So this is the first time, and that we will talk about it, is Joven Jones. Joven Jones is still on the Inter Miami roster, but he was not at practice on Monday. I am being told that Inter Miami is looking to part ways with him, trying to find a solution for him, but that's still being worked out. So out of all those players, out of all those situations, also Gregory and Jean Mota were also not in training on Monday. Gregory has arrived in South Florida, and he did join the Group 4 practice later in the week on Tuesday, I believe. He was filing some paperwork, as is Jean Mota, but Mota is also expected to arrive very, very shortly. Anyway, out of all those players, Jose, anyone you want to expand on? You have the floor.
Well, I did on Robinson a little bit just a few seconds ago, and it was not very positive. So sorry, Robbie. I want you as a 9 on this team. I like to talk on Figal because as rules are complicated in MLS, but I think still, something that that you have to take into consideration when you think about Major League Soccer, and having Leandro Gonzalez Pires play for River Plate and having Nico Figal close to Boca. I think he posted a story on his Instagram account as well, watching Boca play, so that's a good indication. But some other teams are interested in him. That's something good for Inter Miami, and that's something good for the league. I do believe with this new group of players, that Inter Miami is bringing in, that they have potential to become, a positive scenario for so many players in South America, and there's that connection already with South Florida and South America. Early on, as Miami started signing players, I always thought they needed a little bit of that South American flair, and they had some, but it didn't work. So hopefully, with players watching Leandro Gonzalez Pires go to River Plate and Figal now go into Boca, allegedly, or someplace else, this tells you that Inter Miami can provide that opportunity for young players. So hopefully that motivates this group of young guys coming in to find success here in South Florida and then move on to bigger places, because, as much as we want to see the league grow, the team grow, the reality is that, most of the players will still want to go to the Premier League, to La Liga, to El Calcio. And, at some point, I think that conversation that David Beckham had early last year about, having players at the highest level, but taking the first steps in Inter Miami, I can see that become a reality. So I just wanted to touch on that because, having Figal and Leandro Gonzalez Pires, it's not the scenario that you wanted, but still, I think you can take some pride that here in South Florida, Inter Miami can take good care of the players and can actually develop and have them play at a high level.
It certainly seems like Inter Miami's a good trampoline or a good showcase to really show what you've got. Sorry for the redundancy, but to show what you've got and really make a move. Because if Inter Miami, with two more experienced players on a team that did not do well, were able to take or make moves to bigger teams in the world of soccer, in the ecosystem of soccer, of football, they either have really good agents or Inter Miami just brings that opportunity. So if you're a young player on a better Inter Miami team, imagine the opportunities you might be able to have. Steve, any of those players that I named, that I ran through there, that you want to touch on or expand on, the floor is yours.
No, that's it. No, I think you make a good point. I think Inter Miami is an attractive place for players to come and play football. So it's not surprising that sort of young guys want to come and try and make their way here. But as you said, it's just there's more of a youthful kind of feel, and all those names that you've mentioned, that Figal was a good player, but I think they could probably do without them. I think they're all replaceable to a certain point.
It was interesting though that Henderson said he's working on his green card process. That Figal's working on his green card process because if he's about to leave but he wants to get his green card, then maybe there's a chance he returns at some point. Maybe one player that probably will not be returning though is Matias Pellegrini. Jose, I believe you asked about him, if I'm not mistaken, and Henderson's response was, his loan runs out in the summer, and they'll have to see who's interested in buying him or taking him on at that point if Estudiantes de La Plata does not trigger that purchase option. So it seems like Matias Pellegrini's days are done. I know there was recent reports saying that Phil Neville wanted him back in South Florida, but that's pretty much done and dusted. Matias Pellegrini probably will not be coming back to South Florida. But let's leave it there. We will do our Q&A session, and we will also talk about one of Steve's favorite things in the whole wide world, and that is a jersey. We'll do that after this. Okay, guys, before we jump into the Q&A, we have to touch on the apparent training top for 2022 that had images leaked of this week. Put it up on Miami Total Football Substack. You can look at them there on Instagram or on Twitter. Any of those three places, we've put those images out there. It's a different shade of pink. It has white accents as opposed to black from last year. Now, Inter Miami on Monday, on day one of preseason training, used their training tops from last year, their practice kits, their practice jerseys from last year. But if these leaked images are representative of the jerseys they will wear this year in practice, it'll be a different look. Steve, I know you love this topic, so we'll start with you. What'd you think of the look?
Beautiful. Very, very pink. I think you'd look nice in them, actually.
Jose, what about you? What are your thoughts? I imagine you'll expand a little bit more.
Nah, not good enough for me. I like the black and pink. I don't like it so much pink and white. I don't know. I just don't see it. I need a little bit more.
I like it because it's different. I like it because it's pink and white, and we've seen the black and pink. I do prefer the pink and black look, though. I agree with you that I prefer that as the main look, and I think why the practice jersey, if this is the practice jersey, you have to keep putting that qualifier because we don't know. It's reported that it is. Footy Headlines is ever reliable and always accurate, but just put that modifier, that qualifier there. I think why this one is pink and white is to distinguish it from the pink game jersey that they will announce at some point before the start of the season. I believe, from what I have heard, that one will be pink and black. But that's what I've heard. So I think that could be why this training top is pink and white, because you got to have them be a bit different so that fans and Inter Miami followers around the world will want to buy both, right? Because if they're very, very close in style or in look, you only need one, right? And then that's less money that the organization can bring in from a revenue standpoint. So I think that's why they've gone with pink and white. On this one, like I said, I like it. I think it's a good look, and I'm glad they took away that like netting that they had on the sleeves there, or that they're going to get rid of the netting apparently that they had on the sleeves there towards the bottom. I didn't really like that part of the training top in 2021. But anyway, let's move on to the Q&A session. We've got a bunch of questions, but we'll just pick a few here and try to run through them as quickly as possible. First question comes from Elder Bar. And he says, not sure if you guys have seen them practice, but have they scrimmaged yet? If so, do they look worse than last year or like a Fort Lauderdale scrimmage? So I'll start here. It's pretty hard to tell the level because it's, we're not positioned in the best spot in terms of viewing experience. And we only get to see 20 to 30 minutes. And again, the one session we did see was a small-sided game. So I can't really gauge the level. There were some good moments from different players, but it's to be determined. Anything you guys want to add there? I will take that silence as a no. All right. Gay P with a good question. Do you think we will see any breakout player from the academy be a starter this season at Inter Miami? Steve, you can go first.
I mean, I don't know. The guys that come up from the USL last year, do they count as academy products? Probably not. I'm certainly it'd be nice to see that, wouldn't it? But I haven't got any names per se. Have you?
I don't think any of them will be a starter this year. I don't think Edison Ascon. I don't think.
No, but...
What the question is starter. This question is: do you see any breakout player from the academy be a starter this season at Inter Miami? And
it's unlikely, isn't it? Unlikely.
I don't think so. I don't. Again, whether it's Edison Ascon, Ian Frey, Georgia Costa, I just don't see them being starters on a consistent basis. Can they get starts here and there? Yes. Can they have good seasons? Yes. But I just don't see them being starters. Jose, what about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I don't see them being starters. I still have my hopes up for Ascona, but I don't see him starting. Not at all.
Okay. All right. Well, then this next question should get us going a little bit more here. It's from Gerald. He says, and this is kind of close, but not exactly. I already know your answer, Jose, but he asks, or she asks, any particular players that you are looking forward to seeing play or are excited for this season? Jose, we know that you are on the Ariel Lassiter train. I think you're the conductor. So I think we have your answer there. Steve, any player, and there's a lot of players to choose from here, my friend. Any player that you're particularly looking forward to seeing?
Well, Rodriguez has a good reputation in Colombia, so I'm interested to see him. I'm interested to see Campaños and my friend Bryce Duke. Yeah, I'm interested to see how he gets on. So that's three, straight off the bat, and also Mabika as well, to see if he gets any starts and how he'll kind of cope. Because I like the look of him, but will he be able to deal with the physicality of MLS? That's another question, isn't it?
So I'll name a few here as well. Jean Mota, obviously, is probably the up till right now the biggest signing that they've made this offseason. So curious to see how he combines and connects with Gregory there in the middle of the park. Both Brazilians, they know each other. I believe they've played together before in the past, if I'm not mistaken. So curious to see how that works out. Leonardo Campana is not officially on the team yet, but everything points that he will be. So I'm curious to see how he is used and how he gets on in his first season in MLS. And I'm also curious to see and interested in seeing how Ian Frey plays. The center back, local product from Coconut Creek. He was poised for some minutes last year, suffered a torn ACL, if my memory serves me correct, in voluntary training before even the start of preseason. That ruled him out for much of the year. I imagine he'll see some minutes at some point this season. So curious to see how he works out or how he pans out, because he is a local product and a player from the academy. So very interesting to see how he develops in 2022. This is not a question, but I think it's worth reading. It comes from Eric Eklund, and he says, don't have a question right now, but representing one of the 50 countries, I thought I'd say, oof, my Swedish is rough here, Hej Fransevich, hi from Sweden. that's what that means. And keep up the great work. You, El Primo, and Jose do star work. Big thanks, mil gracias, stort tack. So that's very nice to hear. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate the support and listen. I mean, obviously we do this for you guys, but knowing that we have listeners around the world, something maybe we didn't realize until this offseason when we really took a deeper dive into our statistics and our numbers. And so that's definitely nice to hear, and we appreciate the kind words. I think Steve has something to add there as well.
No, I love Sweden. Been there many times. Been to Malmo, Gothenburg a few times working. Covered the under 21 championships in Sweden in 2009. We stayed in Varberg, which was a lovely place just outside Malmo. So it's so cool to know that people in Sweden and in Europe as well as in Central South America everywhere are listening to this. It's such a small soccer world.
The world of football is surprisingly small. Given how vast it is, it does tend to be quite small in terms of how you run into people or you meet people. It does. I have had those experiences throughout my life and career. But Jose, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, it's just first off, I want to say thank you to Eric for listening. But it's just great to bring people to South Florida, to the Inter Miami world from all over the place. That's really cool. And of course, we're gonna have to explain things a little bit more when we talk about South Florida, because it's not only people that know the area that are listening. So, that's great. It's very exciting. And hopefully we continue to get those messages. Where are you listening from right now? Send it over on Twitter.
Or in the review. If you leave an Apple Podcast review, let us know where you're tuning in from. I also had an exchange last week with someone on Twitter that was based in Washington, D.C. that's not even an Inter Miami fan or an Inter Miami supporter, but they tune into the show on a regular basis and say, he said that we do a good job of providing him all the info on Inter Miami and keeping him up to date on that. So that was also nice to hear as well. Let's do one more question from this week's mailbag, and it comes from, let's see. We have a few. We have a bunch of questions, as we always do. We're trying to shorten the gap here on the Q&A session. So if we don't get to your questions this week, don't be discouraged. We will try to get to as many questions as possible on a weekly basis. Okay, next one comes from Eric Yanis. I haven't seen any comments on the remarks made by Neville that they're now actually scouting players and trying to make good judgment decisions on who they bring on. Was he suggesting that they weren't trying before? Steve, Primo, the floor is yours.
Well, the regime and the people they had in place, our friend Paul McDonough, it was shown that they made a bit of a mess of it, really. So I thought that was, my ears certainly pricked up when he said that. But, reading between the lines, we know that they weren't happy with the way that things were run in the past, and they've tried to turn it around now. That was Paul McDonough's job, wasn't it, to install that kind of network, and I'm pretty sure that Chris Henderson's doing a little bit of a better job.
Jose, before I get your thoughts on that, I do want to share the quote that Phil Neville said there, which I thought was very interesting, as Steve agreed to or thought along the similar lines. He said, quote, "We are now not just signing players because a friend of a friend knows someone that is good or an agent that is close to someone. We are signing players because they have been watched 20, 30, 40 times by 5-6 people, and we know all about their family history and everything they have done in their career. We are not signing players now off a whim. We are signing players because they fit into what we believe is our team." End quote. Pretty revealing comment from his portion of Monday's availability. But I do want to add this, and something that somebody brought up to me after the fact, and I didn't even think about it in the moment. But, Phil Neville says we're not now signing players because a friend of a friend knows someone that is good or an agent that is close to someone. I don't know if that's necessarily the best coming from him, because he is a friend of a friend, and that's how he got to this position, right? Like that. Let's be honest. Is that not the case here, Jose?
Yeah, but you get that in all teams, though. That's
right. But again, I don't necessarily think it's best coming from him to say that when he's, someone that's benefited from the same thing he's criticizing. But anyway, Jose, what are your thoughts on that, just in general?
Well, I think that's the way you feel explaining how things have changed during the off season. That's part of the business. When you get a recommendation from a player, I think it has happened to all of us here in the podcast that, sometimes you get word from somebody from a team you're covering and they ask you, what do you think about this guy? Stuff like that happens. It's not that we have the final word, but sometimes they come to you and they ask you, what's going on? What do you think? Is it going to be a good fit or not? Um, it's only normal that players that have a relationship with somebody else within the team might get an opportunity to be looked at. But I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're good enough, they're gonna sign you. If not, then it's not gonna happen. But I think it's more about Phil explaining how things have changed and the process that you have to go through to sign a contract with Inter Miami.
Right, I agree. That was my interpretation of what he said. That they now have more processes or better processes in place to help identify talent, and that they are much more thorough now in the manner in which they do that. So I think that's just more along the lines of what he was getting at. Obviously, somebody might interpret that and say, well, they were there last season, why didn't they do that? It takes time. It takes time to implement processes. So I think that's just where he was going with that. That now, maybe, and again, he didn't name names, but maybe signing Matuidi and Higuain was done pretty hastily, right? And maybe it wasn't done as thoroughly as Phil Neville and his staff would like their signings to be. So that's what I think he was just more or less getting at. But we'll leave it there. We'll finish the Q&A session with that. We will do our final thoughts. Primo, you can go first. Cinco, you can go second. And I will go last.
No, just to say, there was just a nice fresh feel about the team and about the squad and everyone there. And I just think so far, in reflection on what the business they've done, in this close season, I think it's gone well, and they've shipped out players and they've crucially freed up that DP play. So let's see what happens when they start actually kicking that little ball around the field.
Jose, you're up.
Well, I think on my final thought, I like to give credit to Chris Henderson because I think he's doing a good job so far, and he's getting closer to putting the finished product out there for Phil to work with. So as of right now, I think the last podcast I mentioned that he had a plan in place. So far, it's looking good. We'll see what the final product is. But the reality is that right now, Inter Miami is very well positioned, not only for this year. Of course, don't think championship, right? It's very well positioned to start to move on in the right direction. And maybe years from now, have a really successful team. So as of right now, it's looking good. I think the outcome of the offseason has been positive. Maybe a final piece or two are missing, but, you're getting closer. And now it's on Phil. He needs to put the work out there and find the right combination to make these players succeed in South Florida.
My final thought will be on just the overall state of the team. This is a younger team, more energetic, faster, more physically gifted. But I don't know how much top-end talent is on this squad. And we have to wait and see to see how the team functions and how they do in meaningful games. That will not happen until the start of February, the end of February when the MLS season starts. But obviously when you start preseason in any team, or almost any team in any year, things are at their most optimistic and everyone's at their happiest. But if we, I'm gonna have take a step back and have a bigger perspective here. There's still top end talent that's missing on this team, and I know that they want to sign a player or two to help out with that, but clearly they need something there, because I don't think that even with all the youthful exuberance and the energy, I don't think that will be enough. I think that they need a little bit more. Jose, we spoke about it at practice for a little bit there on Monday morning, so I think they need a little bit more there to really become a competitive side in 2022. But it's early days, so we'll see how they continue to build this roster as well as how they do once the games get going. But that does it for this week's pod. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Again, if you haven't left us a review on Apple Podcast, please do so. We keep repeating that because it is very, very important for us.
Do it.
Yes, Steve, there you go. Steve can say it better than I do, or more succinctly than I can. So please, if you haven't done it, just leave us a review. It'll take you literally less than 30 seconds or less than a minute. But For Steve El Primo Brenner, for Jose Cinco Armando, I am Franco Panizo. We will talk to you guys again next week. We'll be back again and with a special surprise, hopefully. So stay locked in for that. This is Miami Total Football Radio.